Hi, I'm Andrew Matner, Director of Attitude Advisory. I'm joined by my business partner, Kristen Buick. Thanks for joining us. We're having a barside chat today about last night's federal budget. That's something that is generally happening around Australia today, where people are having a business lunch or a breakfast or a get together with their friends tonight at the local bar, talking about all things budget and what it means for them over a beer or a glass of wine. So we thought, what a better way to bring you the useful information than do the same. So
very topical.
Thanks everyone for joining us. Kristen, give us and give our clients and viewers a quick headline of what we learned from last night's budget.
Great, thank you, Andrew. We learnt a few things. We learnt that the government put a budget together that was aimed at jobs and small business and business in general to try and stimulate the economy, I suppose. There were no real surprises in there, bar two. So we've got a couple of big announcements we'll talk about in a minute. I feel like this budget was one of a budget of least resistance. I feel like the current government have gone and put a budget together which was almost guaranteed to get across the line with the opposition.
Yep.
So that there was no stalling and we could really keep the economy moving.
And I think that's important to know. Watching some of the coverage last night and hearing some of the interviews today, there definitely hasn't been, like there has been in prior years, any vocal opposition to certain measures from the opposition side that was setting the budget. So I think what we heard last night and what's been announced, we're going to see a pretty safe passage through Parliament relatively quickly, so they'll come into place. Kristen, you mentioned there was two key announcements that came out of last night's budget. What were they?
We had the big one for the instant asset write-off for businesses that have a $50 million or less turnover, so they get to write off new and used assets.
Yep.
We also have personal tax cuts. So personal tax cuts are going to affect people as soon as legislation is passed. We'll see thresholds change, pays will increase, the take-home pay will increase, and then there'll be a reconciliation at the end of the year.
Yeah, okay. So, I mean, I guess the big thing in that, the small business instant asset write-off, I think is going to be a big thing for our clients where they've got the funding available to do that. So I guess there's two aspects to that. For assets that were ordered before budget night last night, the government's given a 6-month extension to 30 June 2021 to get them installed, ready for use.
Great.
That was 31st of December. The extension of that is anything that's purchased now, post-budget, they've got to 30th of June 2022 to get them in place. So that's going to be a real big thing at play for our clients, where they've got the cash flow available to do that. So
definitely. We have also seen people sitting on more cash than they have been in the past, because there haven't been a lot of places to go and spend your cash.
Yeah.
So people have been saving to spend on assets. So I think that'll be a great thing for the economy.
Yeah, and the tax cuts were already something that was coming. The ATO have just not the ATO, the government have just brought forward stage 1 and stage 2 of those tax cuts earlier than what they would have been introduced anyway.
Yeah.
The stage 3 tax cuts for the higher income earners, they're still per the original schedule, so nothing changes there. But for someone on around about 120 grand plus a year in income, it's worth about $2.5 grand a year.
Yeah,
so
significant. On the back of that, an interesting point is that we still have a huge disparity in our marginal tax rates for individuals when we compare them to our small business company tax rate particularly. So we're looking at 45 cents for the highest rate, plus Medicare for an individual, and 26 cents currently for a small business tax.
For a company tax rate, yeah, for sure. Talking about companies, that's probably the next interesting thing in terms of small business clients that has come out. They announced last night that we've got this I call it clawback of tax losses. We know a lot of businesses have been struggling through the pandemic. A lot of them have been making losses. Ordinarily, you'd have to wait till you made a profit in the future to use those losses, but they've announced that we can offset them against prior year profits.
Yeah.
Now, I guess the disappointing thing in that is this only applies to companies. So it's only going to be a handful of clients that trade through those entities that are really going to benefit from that. A lot of clients
use trusts,
partnerships, sole traders, all that sort of stuff. Unfortunately, that's duck eggs for those business operators. They don't get anything in terms of those measures.
True, but one would argue that they've received benefit all along the way by being able to smooth their income. So it can work both ways.
Yeah, true. There's different ways of looking at it.
Yeah.
Talk to us about jobs, Kristen. So in terms of employment, we've obviously seen JobKeeper in place, which is going to be phased out at the end of March. There was obviously no continuation of that in last night's announcements. What's coming to bear instead?
So we're going to have some replacement job incentives. So we're going to have something for people employing apprentices, and we're going to have some kickbacks as well for those people that are employed in the age bracket up to 35.
Okay, so it's really for young workers?
For young workers, yeah.
Yeah, cool. And going with that, there's obviously some benefits to employers in relation to some fringe benefits tax concessions regarding retraining people and some other bits and pieces which will help along the way as well.
Yeah, definitely. And some car parking, some small stuff to do with FBT, but mostly with FBT and particularly with R&D, they're just trying to improve, I suppose, the compliance or decrease the compliance, make it easier for small business to access these things so that they'll go ahead and spend money.
Yeah, cool. So I guess that's probably the key things out of last night. There's some other announcements regarding some, I'll call it wind back or easing of some changes regarding research and development, which we'll have specifically in our written blog as to what that might impact, but it doesn't impact a lot of our clients, so we won't specifically talk about that.
No.
But they're probably the main things that came to bear. There were some other funding announcements for regional Australia in terms of water and some other bits and pieces, but generally the big ticket items are the carry forward or the clawback losses, the instant asset write-off, and obviously for the individuals and taxpayers the tax cuts and the tax changes around that. So
I suppose another fun fact just before we close off here is the granny flat situation.
Oh, great one.
So you can put the granny flat in the backyard, set up your mother, your father, your elder, can't be a young person, and looks like there'll be no CGT on those properties when sold. Fascinating though, because it's going to increase the overall price of our asset, which is already a CGT exempt asset. So that'll be really interesting.
Yeah, it will be. And of course that becomes a choice whether you actually want your parents living in your backyard or not too. That's probably the other interesting fact that goes with that. To my mum and dad, feel free to stay in the Barossa as long as you like. So thanks everyone for joining us.
Thank you.
Something a bit different in terms of having a chat over a drink.
Yeah.
Like always, if you've got any specific questions regarding your circumstances, please contact Kristen or myself or any one of the advisors at Altitude, and we'll answer your questions from there. Thanks.
Well done. Cheers.